Here's a quick demo of the transpiler in action. I've written a simple web page. I've made it as simple as I could imagine so that it's readable. I've stuck the code snippet into this upper window, and then when I click test, it runs the transpiler and outputs JavaScript down here. This is a quickie intro on how I use Ohm.js to transpile a snippet of code. Here's the snippet of code. It was taken from this repo listed down here. Um, Basically, it's a bunch of English words that replace punctuation in code. This is the JavaScript that we want to have come out of the transpiler. Note that the JavaScript doesn't have indentation. We don't care. We just want to make machine readable code. Later we can jam the generated JavaScript through a pretty printer if we want human readable versions of this. Currently I use Emacs in JavaScript mode to view this stuff in human readable format. How do I do this? I do this in 3 steps, plus I take one extra development step during development. Each step is implemented as a separate function. Each function uses a separate Ohm.js grammar and a separate formatter, which is also called a semantics. Each step is implemented and tested separately. The output of a step is fed forward to the next step in kind of a pipeline manner. The output of step 1 is pipelined into the input of step 2. The output of step 2 is pipelined into the input of step 3. Why bother with separate steps? We want to reduce dependencies to 0 if possible. I call this 0D. When we build things, we want to build and forget them. So we concentrate on one subject, on one problem. We build a solution to the problem as well as we can, and we put it away, and we don't have to think about it. And whatever we do later doesn't affect the solution to the problem. Premature optimization impacts the way you think. It takes you out of, quote, the zone or flow, whatever you want to call it. And using optimization techniques will cause you to do premature optimization. So step 1, I tokenize the input using Ohm.js lexical rules. I then write the transpiler using mostly Ohm.js syntactic rules. And then I optimize using a feature of Ohm.js, which I guess you could do in Peg, but Ohm.js makes it much simpler. I generate fairly dumb JavaScript at first from step 2 transpiler. For example, I don't emit arrays, I emit them as function calls, and then later I optimize the function calls, the specific function calls that have the word at in them, to array accesses that look more like JavaScript. And the extra development step that I take is I create an identity grammar. I create a skeleton parser formatter where the output is exactly the input modulo some spaces that I don't need. And then later I hack on the skeleton to create step 2 transpiler. During development, I use the Ohm editor to write and debug grammars. And this is where you can find it. It's very convenient. I've used Peg and I've used Peg is better than Yak. Peg without the Ohm editor it leaves something to be desired. And Ohm editor is like a REPL for editing grammars. I'm going to do a demo of simple overview, and this is where you can find the code.